Have you ever wondered why some people panic the moment you step away? Not because you abandoned them, not because you stopped caring, but simply because you weren't always available. You needed space. You created silence. You chose yourself. And suddenly, everything changed. They became distant, resentful, angry, or worse, needy. And it left you wondering, was their love ever real? Or was it just dependent on your presence? This is the difference most of us never learn until it's too late. Attachment demands your presence. Connection respects your essence. Attachment clings to your body. Connection holds your soul. One says, "Don't leave or I'll fall apart." The other says, "Even if you're gone, I'll stay grounded in what we've built." In a world addicted to constant contact, instant replies, and digital visibility, most of us mistake proximity for love. We think being physically or emotionally always there means we're bonded. But true connection doesn't live in closeness. It lives in trust, in silence, in absence, in how the relationship breathes when you're not constantly feeding it. This video is a conversation about healthy distance, unhealthy attachment, and how the people who truly love you don't need to possess you to feel safe. They don't need you to be always accessible. They just need you to be real. And when you finally stop mistaking attachment for love, you realize the ones who truly see you. Don't panic when you're not always right there. There's a kind of love that holds you tight and suffocates you. And there's a kind of love that lets you breathe and somehow still feels just as close. Most people grow up believing that love means being constantly available. Always there, always responsive, always proving. But that's not love. That's emotional surveillance dressed up as devotion. When love is driven by attachment, it doesn't trust absence. It doesn't survive silence. It fears distance. Because attachment is not rooted in connection. It's rooted in control. It says, "Don't change. Don't go. Don't grow. Because if you do, I might lose access to you. And if I lose access to you, I lose the illusion of safety I've built around you." Attachment creates love that's conditional. If you make me feel needed, I'll feel secure. If you're always available, I'll feel loved. If you stay the same, I won't feel abandoned. But true connection doesn't need that level of control. Connection says, "I love who you are, not just what you give me. I trust the bond we've built, not just the time we spend. I don't need to track you to feel close to you." You see, connection is built on freedom. It allows both people to breathe. It allows silence without fear. It allows growth without punishment. It allows distance without collapse. And most importantly, it allows you to leave, not because the relationship is ending, but because you need space to remain whole. In toxic attachment, space is betrayal. In real connection, space is respect. And when you begin to understand this, something inside you breaks, and something stronger replaces it. You stop measuring love by how often someone checks in. You stop craving constant communication to feel secure. You stop equating availability with depth. You realize if someone only feels close to you when you're always there, they're not loving you. They're depending on your presence to soothe their anxiety. That's not intimacy. That's dependency. And love built on dependency will always ask you to shrink to be kept. It will always punish your individuality. It will always view your absence as threat, not necessity. But when love is rooted in connection, it doesn't collapse under distance. It expands with it. Because in real connection, you don't lose someone. When they take space, you respect them more for knowing when they need it. And you trust that if the connection is real, it will remain. Not because you're constantly feeding it, but because it was never built on hunger in the first place. In attachment, love becomes a performance. You start to feel like you're constantly auditioning, showing up, replying fast, being available, always proving that you're still here. And when you pause, even for a moment, there's panic, accusation, withdrawal. The relationship becomes like a tightrope. You can't move freely without risking collapse. Let's talk about the signs. Here's what toxic attachment often looks like. Constant anxiety when you're apart, even for healthy reasons. Fear that silence means disconnection. Needing frequent reassurance just to feel okay. Equating someone's physical absence with emotional abandonment. Overreactions to you needing time alone, focusing on yourself, or setting boundaries. Unspoken rules that say, if you love me, you must always be around. Blaming distance for emotional insecurity instead of facing inner fear. In short, attachment demands that you stay visible, because without you they collapse. But connection is different, profoundly different. Here's what healthy connection looks like. Trust that survives silence. Respect for each other's individual needs, goals, and rhythms. Absence without assumptions. Appreciation that space can deepen love, not threaten it. Reunion that doesn't require guilt or apology. Unspoken understanding. I may not always be beside you, but I'm with you. Connection doesn't need constant touch to feel intimate. It doesn't need daily check-ins to feel real. Because it's not built on the fear of loss. It's built on the confidence of knowing you are still you. I am still me. And we still choose each other even with distance in between. Think about the sun and the earth. The sun doesn't chase the earth to prove it shines. And the earth doesn't need to clutch the sun to stay warm. There's gravity, orbit, rhythm, trust, space. That's what connection feels like. But many of us don't know how to live in that kind of space because we've been taught that love is proximity, not presence. That love is proof, not peace. So we smother, we overgive, we panic when someone pulls back, and we take distance as rejection instead of reflection. But here's the truth. Distance doesn't destroy love. It reveals the truth of it. It shows you whether the bond is based on dependence or on depth. It reveals whether someone loves you or simply needs you to stay close because they fear being alone. And when you begin to see this, you stop fearing distance. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop confusing love with availability. You realize the one who truly loves you doesn't ask you to shrink yourself to stay visible. They don't collapse when you take a step back. They trust the thread between you, even when it's not always tight. Here's the hard truth. Most of us were never taught how to love without clinging. We were raised on stories where true love meant never letting go, where distance equaled danger, where separation meant loss, where being in love required constant proof presence and reassurance. So we grew up believing that closeness must be earned every day, that if someone takes space, it's our fault, that if they need distance, it means they're leaving, that if they grow, we must shrink, or they'll forget us. And from that belief, we became afraid. Afraid of silence, afraid of space, afraid of someone we love becoming themselves outside of us. But here's what that fear really is. It's not love. It's unhealed attachment. It's the part of you that still confuses presence with safety. It's the child in you that once felt abandoned and now thinks closeness is survival. But you're not that child anymore. And the love you're building now needs something deeper, something more mature, something more aware. It needs connection that isn't built on fear. Connection that can hold space without closing in. Connection that says, even when I'm not beside you, I'm still with you. This kind of connection doesn't happen by accident. It takes inner work. It takes noticing your patterns. It takes healing the part of you that equates distance with loss. It takes learning to trust the bond without always testing it. Because let's be honest, some of us create unnecessary closeness because we're terrified of what distance might reveal. We text too much, call too often, overexpress, overcheck. Not because we're in love, but because we're anxious. We don't trust what will happen when we stop chasing. We don't know who we are when we stop giving. We fear that when we take a breath, they'll disappear. But that's the test, isn't it? When you stop chasing, who stays? When you stop proving, who still sees you? When you stop being always there, who still feels connected? That's the moment the truth appears. Because anyone can love the version of you that's always accessible, always agreeable, always available. But only someone truly connected to your soul will stay close, even when you step back. So, how do you start building love that's based on connection, not attachment? It begins with one simple truth. You are not responsible for regulating someone else's anxiety. Their discomfort with space silence or your autonomy is not yours to carry. You are allowed to be present without being on call. You are allowed to love someone deeply without being always accessible. And you don't have to prove your care through availability. You prove it through consistency, through truth, through emotional honesty. Here's what that looks like. 1. You communicate with clarity, not codependency. You don't say, "I'm always here," just to keep them calm. Instead, you say, "I'm here because I choose to be. But I also choose to take care of myself." That's connection. That's honesty. That's sustainable. 2. You normalize space. Space is not a threat. It's a rhythm, like the inhale and exhale of a breath. You teach this to your partner, your friend, your family, not by preaching, but by embodying it. You take space when you need it, and you honor theirs when they need it. You don't make someone earn closeness. You don't punish distance. You don't guilt them for being themselves. 3. You stay whole, whether they're beside you or not. Your sense of self doesn't dissolve when they're not around. You stay grounded in your purpose, your routines, your joy, and you trust, if the connection is true, it will hold even in silence. Because now your love is not a demand. It's an offering. You don't say, "Love me so I don't fall apart." You say, "I am whole, and I choose to share this with you." And that changes everything. Because when two people come together without fear, just presence, without clutching, just choosing, without testing, just trusting, they don't drown each other. They expand each other. In this kind of love, time apart becomes nourishment, not punishment. Silence becomes intimacy, not avoidance. Growth becomes celebration, not betrayal. And most of all, you stop being afraid of losing people who only loved the version of you that was always available. Because now, you only make room for people who can hold your truth, not just your proximity. There comes a moment in every relationship where space becomes inevitable. Someone gets busy. Someone needs rest. Someone grows. Life changes. And in that space, you will see the truth. Because love that's built on attachment starts to decay without daily validation. But love that's built on connection deepens. Why? Because real love doesn't panic when you're not always available. It doesn't fall apart because you took a weekend for yourself. It doesn't withdraw its affection because you weren't instantly responsive. It doesn't equate absence with abandonment. Real love trusts you even when it can't see you. It holds its shape even when life gets quiet. It doesn't demand constant proximity to feel safe. It doesn't punish you for having a life beyond the relationship. And it definitely doesn't confuse your growth with betrayal. And here's the part most people miss. Distance is not the opposite of love. Possessiveness is. Because love at its core is not about possession. It's about presence. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back, to let someone breathe, to take a moment for yourself, to prove not to them, but to yourself, that your worth is not in how often you show up, but how fully you show up when you do. Because when you love someone with awareness, you don't try to hold them tighter when they need air. You open your palm and trust that if the connection is real, they will not fly away. They will rest. They will grow. They will return. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. That's what real love does. It gives people space to become themselves without making them feel guilty for evolving. It doesn't ask, why are you not always here? It asks, how can I support your becoming, even when I'm not part of the process? And when you reach that level of maturity in love, you stop fearing distance. You stop clinging to presence. You start seeing space not as a threat, but as a mirror. Because it's in the space you discover who still checks in even when you're not initiating, who respects your quiet without trying to fill it, who honors your boundary instead of making it about them, who loves you not your availability, your effort, or your sacrifice. So maybe now you finally see it. You were never meant to be everything all the time to anyone. You were never meant to be constantly available to prove you care. You were never meant to abandon your own needs to maintain someone else's comfort. You were never meant to shrink your world to fit inside theirs. And most of all, you were never meant to stay visible, just to be loved. Because the person who truly sees you doesn't panic when you need space, doesn't punish your absence, doesn't measure love by your proximity. They know that the deepest connection is not in constant closeness, but in quiet presence, grounded trust, and chosen return. So you stop chasing. You stop performing presence to feel safe. You stop offering pieces of yourself just to stay relevant. You stop overcompensating for other people's wounds. And in that quiet, you begin to return to yourself. You start to see that love, the kind that lasts, doesn't ask you to be always there. It asks you to be always real. So let this be your reminder. You can love someone without overextending yourself. You can stay connected without being constantly accessible. You can hold space for someone without abandoning your own. You can step back without stepping away. And if someone loves you, truly loves you, they will feel you even in your silence. They will honor your distance. They will not need to own you to feel close to you. Because love rooted in connection is not about holding on. It's about letting be. So, from this day forward, may you choose love that breathes. May you choose people who don't need to control your presence to trust your care. May you let go of the idea that being always there is the proof of your worth. Because now you know the one who truly loves you doesn't need you to always be there. They just need you to always be you. And that, above all, is enough.